It was just a regular Saturday night. I wasn't in the best mood as I had to babysit my little 8-year-old cousin Alex. That night, my aunt and uncle were heading out of town for the night with my parents, and they needed a babysitter. Of course, they just had to volunteer me. My dad offered to pay me $60 to take Alex to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. I would have rather just stayed home and watched TV, but making $60, sit at a pizzeria, watch robots on a stage for an hour at the most seemed like a pretty good deal. Before leaving, my dad handed me $80, the extra 20 for whatever the cost was for the food and games. I would obviously pocket the change. My aunt and uncle dropped Alex off as they left. My parents and I greeted Alex and tried talking to him, although I didn't expect much of a conversation from an 8-year-old. It was around 8 o'clock when we left. I had never been to this place. I imagined it would be like Disney or something with their animatronics. I did, however, know this place had a bad history and it would have to be closed by the end of the year. Alex seemed excited on the way there. I couldn't relate. I remember always been afraid of those singing animatronics in these kinds of places when I was younger. We got there at around 8:15. The last show of the night started at around 8:30. I remember outside seeing a help wanted sign for a security guard. I wondered why a place like this would even need a security guard, but I shrugged it off. We sat down at the table and I got us pizza. It tasted no better than a frozen pizza. I didn't expect much more through the atmosphere. It seems outdated, like something that would fit in the late 80s. The place wasn't particularly nice or clean either, but it was still very popular, which made me wonder what could have been happened to make it close by the end of the year. While eating, there was suddenly a drum roll, followed by a voice introducing the characters on the stage. The curtains opened, kids cheered, and it revealed 3 animatronic singers: Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica. I was shocked. These animatronics looked old and less detailed than I was expecting. They looked creepy. As they sang their first song, Alex, along with all the other kids, seemed to be enjoying it. Even most of the parents seemed to be smiling and having a good time, but I just stared with the blank expression on my face. The animatronics' moves were pretty smooth and impressive, though they probably made off with the looks. After they finished their first song, the chicken in the back, Chica, I swear, turned its head, looked straight at me. It wasn't by chance. Its eyes were fixed right on me. I stared back, a little freaked out. Maybe they were programmed to make eye contact like that, but for how long? It was staring at me for at least 30 seconds. Both the other animatronics were turning their heads and eyes to look at the whole crowd, but not Chica. It wasn't until the next song started that Chica finally started moving its head again. I felt relieved, considering maybe I was just a little paranoid, letting my childhood fear of animatronics get the better of me. At least Alex seemed to be enjoying it. The song went by for about 3 minutes before ending. I at this point completely calmed down until it happened again. Chica turned its head to face me, eyes locked onto mine. But this time, Bonnie turned its head to look at me as well. What the hell? It said it obviously loud enough for Alex to hear me as he looked at me with a curious stare. I pointed out to Alex that the two animatronics were looking at me. He didn't even acknowledge what I said, and Freddy spoke to the audience. Then both Bonnie and Chica's fake eyes were locked onto mine. My heart started beating twice as fast. At this point, I was freaking out in my seat. Why was nobody turning around to see what the two robots were staring at? Was anybody acknowledging what was going on? I got up out of my seat to go refill my soda at the fountains. Frightened to look behind me at the stage, I refilled my cup and stalled by slowly putting on a new lid and straw. I was just waiting for the next song to start, or some kind of intermission. I couldn't turn around to look at the stage. Suddenly I heard Alex call my name. I had to turn around. It's okay. I thought there was no way the animatronics were still looking at me after I left my seat. I turned around to look at Alex, but I saw at the corner of my eyes the two heads staring at me. I dropped my cup of soda on the floor out of shock. An employee came over and asked me if I was alright. I asked him why the hell the two animatronics were staring at me. Just as I was saying that, I heard Freddy on stage say, "It's time for an intermission." I turned my head to look at the stage, and the curtains were already closing. The employee explained to me that the animatronics were designed to make eye contact with people before he walked off. I could tell he hadn't taken me seriously. At least the curtains were closed and I couldn't see them anymore. But still, I just couldn't forget how they looked at me. They stared directly at me. But the way they stared at me, it didn't feel happy or friendly. It felt evil. I asked Alex if he was ready to leave because I wanted to get the hell out of that place. He told me he wanted to see the rest of the show and play some of the arcade games. He asked me for my cell phone, telling me that he had to tell his mom something. I handed him my phone and he walked off to the arcade games. As he walked off, I noticed another mini stage away from the main stage. It was called Pirates Cove. The stage had the curtain closed and a tiny sign out front that read "out of order." I asked an employee what it was and why it was closed. He told me that the animatronic that lives on the stage, named Foxy, had a technical malfunction a few years back, causing its hook to gouge out a child's eye, killing them in the process. This news made me realize why this place had a troubled history and why it'd be closing by the end of the year. It shocked me that such a horrific accident that happened in this kind of place, and how it managed to stay open for so long. I was starting to feel uncomfortable staying in that place. I wanted to leave as soon as possible, but I knew Alex would be upset if we just abruptly left. I saw him playing some of the arcade games. I sat back down and just waited. I just waited for the show to end as soon as possible so we can leave. I wanted to get the fuck out of there. About 5 minutes passed until the intermission was over and the curtains were opening back up. A lot of the kids had already gotten up and had not come back to the stage. I couldn't really blame them. I never found animatronics entertaining when I was younger either. Alex didn't come back either. I know I should have just probably gotten away from the stage and played some of the games with Alex, but part of me was curious. I needed to know. I needed to see what was going on, and if these things would still stare directly at me with their evil plastic eyes. Freddy and Bonnie made jokes and interacted with the remaining kids in the audience. About a bit before starting their third song. It was interesting though. Most animatronics were attached to the floor, only able to move from the torso up. These guys, their legs seemed to have free movement, allowing Freddy and his friends to walk across the stage. It was incredible and horrifying. The third song ended, and I was ready for them to look at me. Nothing. None of them turned their heads in my direction. I felt weird. A weird mix of feelings. Relief and discontentment. Why was I anticipating it? Why did I want them to stare at me? The last song went by fast because all of my thoughts. As it ended, the three friends started to say their farewells to the children. At this point, I was convinced that they weren't gonna stare at me. And that maybe the worker was right. Maybe they were set to make eye contact with people. It was almost 9 o'clock, which meant that place was getting ready to close. Most of the parents and the kids started to head for the door. Alex came to me and told me he had to go to the bathroom. The public's men's room was out of order, had a sign on it. I asked an employee where he could use the restroom, and she said that he could use the employee restroom, and pointed Alex to the bathroom. There was an announcement that the place was now closed. I waited for a few more minutes. It seemed that I was the last person there. Most of the employees had left. I stood there, growing impatient, till I noticed something in the corner of my eye. No, it couldn't be. I turned my head to see that all three of them were staring at me. All three animatronics, eyes locked onto mine, the same ominous stare. I felt like my heart sank into my stomach. I couldn't even choke out words to call for an employee. It's time to get the fuck out of there. I stormed down the hallway, quickly bursting into the employee restroom. I called Alex. He didn't respond. I looked under the stalls to see if anybody was in them. I saw Alex's shoes. I immediately felt relieved and stood by the door, waiting. I waited for what felt like another 5 minutes. I didn't want to say anything to make him feel awkward, but I asked if he was almost done in there, because the place was now closed. Nothing. I started to become curious and scared. He hadn't made a single sound. I walked up to the stall and knocked, but as I knocked, the stall door creaked open to reveal nothing but Alex's shoes. He wasn't in there. I heard it come from outside the bathroom. Sounded like some kind of door closing. I ran out of the bathroom to find the main lights had been shut off, with only source of light being the dimly lit night lights. I made my way back to the lobby, or at least what I would call the lobby in this place. I screamed for Alex, and I
screamed for help, but to no avail. This was insane. I thought, what kind of place completely shuts down in such a rush like this? It was probably only 10 o'clock. I ran to the entrance, thinking maybe Alex was waiting outside, only to realize that there was a giant metal door blocking the entrance. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know how to react. I was trapped in this place. Why would a place like this have a giant metal door like that? Were they trying to keep something out or in? I had to call my parents or the police or someone. Alex was missing and I was trapped. I reached into my pocket for my phone. Empty. I remembered that I had given it to Alex. I tried to calm myself down. I can't be the only person in the building. I thought to myself, and there had to be a phone somewhere in this building. I walked down every hallway I could find, looking for a phone, and occasionally shouting for somebody. The only phone I had found so far was disconnected. If it weren't for the fact that Alex was by himself on a Saturday night, I wouldn't have been in such a panic. What happened to him? Why were his shoes just in the bathroom stall? What if somebody had taken him? I had to call the police, but there was no phone. I walked down another hallway, finding a door I hadn't checked yet that had a staff-only sign. I opened the door to only discover a room full of animatronic body parts. The room smelled foul, like something was rotting, and I was standing in some kind of thick liquid substance. I got out of that room as quickly as I entered, seeing those animatronic parts. And it made me think, maybe Alex was sitting in the dining area and waiting for me. The dining area was right outside the hall I was in. So I thought I might as well check navigating in the barely lit building. It was pretty difficult. Also creepy. When I got to the dining area, I called for Alex, but no response. Suddenly, I noticed something through the corner of my eye. I could see those curtains on the stage had been opened again. I could have sworn they had been shut after the show. I didn't want to turn my head in fear of what I was expecting to see, but I could give myself more time to think. I turned my head to the stage to see Chica and Freddy on the stage. There was a third one. I knew there was a third one. The bunny. The bunny was missing. Where was the bunny? I was able to make out in the dark the heads of the two animatronics facing me. I had run out of there as quickly as I could, back into the dark hallways. I stopped to catch my breath, but I heard something coming down from the hall. There were footsteps coming my way. I was saved. Somebody was there. I ran closer to the source of the footsteps, yelling for help. But as I got closer, I slowed down, noticing that the footsteps were very unnaturally heavy. Too heavy to be human beings' footsteps. I stopped, thinking something wasn't right. The flickering light ahead of me didn't provide enough light to see the source of the footsteps yet. As the footsteps got closer, I could see the figure. It was the shadow of the bunny, standing in the dark light from the hall. I wasn't able to let out a scream the robot started walking towards me. And at that instant, I ran into the nearest room, which happened to be some sort of security room. I looked for anything to defend myself, but there was no weapons. Nothing. But there was a button on the wall. This seemed to be a door control. The footsteps were getting closer, almost outside the room. I ran to that wall and threw my fist onto the button, causing a giant metal door to slide down. And it let out a huge bang. For a few seconds before the noise of the buzzing sound, the dim fluorescent light. How was this possible? How could these animatronic performers have the ability to roam freely? What the hell was happening? That thing was following me. These things are alive. These nightmarish thoughts kept pouring into my mind that I didn't even notice the heavy footsteps coming from the opposite direction. I turned around, realizing there was another opening to the room with an identical door switch. I immediately sprang to the door, slamming my fist on the button, not wanting to see what was coming down the hall. I sat in the room feeling safe for a few moments until I remembered that Alex was still missing. I had to find a way out of there, but there was no way I could step back into the hallways until I knew those things were gone. There were 2 windows in the room facing either side with the view into the hallways. I couldn't see anything outside them through it. It was pitch black. I almost noticed that under the button on both the sides were 2 buttons that were labeled light. Maybe these lights were for outside this security office. I needed to make sure that the robots weren't outside. I pressed the switch on the left side of the room to reveal the bunny's face. It was staring through the glass. I hit the light switch again to turn it off. I didn't want to see that thing. I didn't want to see that thing looking at me through the glass. I moved across the room to the other side, pressing the light switch. I almost fell to the floor in fear. It was Chica, the animatronic chicken, staring at me through the glass. Her mouth was open disturbingly wide, revealing a second pair of teeth inside of her beak. These teeth were smaller and seemed human-like, but mechanical. Both of them banged on the glass, keeping eye contact with me. I shut off the light when I couldn't take the sight of the thing anymore. I ran into the chair in the middle of the room and balled up like a baby. Both robots reminded me of their presence, constantly knocking on the glass. Feared that they may break the glass. I didn't want to know what they were going to do to me if they got inside, but I imagined the worst. Couldn't see anything through the glass, but I knew they were still there, watching me. While looking around the room, I found a flashlight in one of the drawers. On the desk, I noticed a camera system. I turned it on. A bunch of screens turned on, surveilling probably every room in the building. I looked at a screen displaying the show stage. Freddy Fazbear was on the stage, staring right into the camera. I looked at another screen that displayed the pirate's code that I had seen earlier. There was an animatronic poking its head out of the curtains. I remember that one the employee told me about, and it was named Foxy. And while he was in disrepair, he was still turned on? Then I realized it didn't matter if they were turned on or not. These things were fucking alive. They were evil. I could see the teeth in Foxy, and I knew I didn't want that thing to be anywhere near me. So I kept my eye on that camera to make sure he didn't move an inch. I sat watching the camera for what felt like hours, and probably was the tapping on the glass that kept me awake. And the fox was still peeking its head out of the curtain. I had been so preoccupied staring at the idle animatronic fox, I forgot to check any other camera system. I looked at the screen displaying the empty stage where Freddy was standing not too long ago. He was gone. Suddenly, all the cameras filled with static. I was blinded from viewing anything in the building. I started to panic and looked around the room again for anything to help me. I found an old phone hidden behind a pile of papers. I picked it up to hear a dial tone. It was working. I immediately started to dial for my parents, but I realized it would be a much better idea to call the police. I redialed for 911. There was no ring. Just the sound of silence from the phone. I hung it up to try again, but I didn't even get a dial tone. These fucking bastards must have interfered with the phone. I got up to take one last peek out of the glass to see if the coast was clear to run. I turned on the lights at the left side to reveal the shadow of the bunny standing in the dark corner. It's blocking the exit. I turned the right light on as well to reveal the chicken still looking straight at me through the glass. I shut both lights off. I was trapped in there, and there was no way to outrun them. I didn't know how fast they were. I sat down in the chair knowing my only option was to wait. I tried to rationalize the situation to calm myself down. Alex is 8. It's not like he's a toddler. I thought, and plus he has my cell phone. Probably has already called his parents, and I'm sure they're on their way. Now I convinced myself. I checked my watch. It was almost 12 a.m. The cameras were still filled with static. I was unable to do anything at this point. All I could do was shut my eyes and wait. I shut my eyes thinking that everything would be fine come morning. I shut my eyes thinking that everything would be fine come morning. I still don't know how I had fallen asleep from closing my eyes for a while. I didn't know falling asleep in this kind of situation was possible. Like, your body would be in fight or flight mode. Your adrenaline would be rushing your body. Just, it would let you fall asleep. But somehow, I did. I woke up to the sickening sound of familiar banging on the glass. It wasn't just a dream. I was still in that god-forsaken place. I checked my watch and I saw it was 4 a.m. I had been asleep for 4 hours. I noticed that the light in the room was a lot dimmer. Almost to the point where I couldn't even see the papers that were hanging up on the wall anymore. The thumping was coming from the right side. I didn't even turn on the light because I didn't want to see that sickening fate. Suddenly, the light flickered. I knew the power dying at this time would be deadly. But because the doors seemed to be powered by the electricity, I had a plan to run as fast as I could through the left door if the power went out. It was my only choice I had. The light grew dimmer and flickered even more. I took one last look at the camera screens to see the curtain at Pirate's Cove had been completely opened, and Foxy was nowhere in sight. Just as I saw this, the power went out, and the room went dark. I ran out the left door, turning the flashlight on. The bunny wasn't anywhere in sight. To my luck, as I ran down the door, I slipped in something, and I fell on the floor. I fell hard on my knee. I felt like it broke. I moaned out in pain, but tried my hardest not to scream. I felt the substance I slipped in with my fingers. I smelled it. It was blood. I was laying in a giant puddle of blood and almost let out a cry of pain and sickness. I tried to get on my feet, but the pain in my knee was unbearable. I started to crawl down the hall with blood all over my arms and legs. I didn't know where to go or how to escape. They would surely catch me now. My luck seemed to be running thin because I heard heavy footsteps coming fast down the hall. I had to act quickly, but I didn't know what to do. I looked around me and found a door. I didn't care what room it led to. I just had to get out of the hallway. The footsteps were getting closer. I shut the flashlight off and managed to reach the doorknob. I pushed the door open. I crawled in the room and pulled my legs in and slammed it shut as quickly and quietly as I could. The darkness, as the footsteps came closer until they were right outside the door. And then it stopped. Whatever it was, right outside the door, put my hand over my mouth to muffle my breathing. I leaned against the door to block it in case the thing tried to get in. It was probably about 10 seconds, but it felt like a minute before the sound of pots and pans banging around echoed across the building. I heard the footsteps move away from the door. I felt that it was safe to no longer hold my breath and turn the flashlight on. The light revealed that I had been sitting in a supply closet. Looked around for any kind of weapon, and to my luck, I found a crowbar. This was seemingly the perfect weapon to defend myself against these robots. Seems like I could bash a robot in the face with. Waited about a minute until I thought the coast was clear, as I slowly creaked open the door and slowly crawled out. My knee wasn't hurting too bad anymore, but I didn't want to take the chance of putting pressure on it. Crawling was quieter anyway. As I crawled through the pitch black hallways banging into walls, I noticed that almost all the floors in these hallways were sticky. The stickiness caused my skin to make peeling sounds off the floor each time I lifted my hands or legs. I didn't think too deep into the stickiness or anything for that matter. I was too focused on getting out of there and finding Alex. As I crawled down the hall, I noticed moonlight shining in through a window in a room ahead. I hoped the window would be low enough and big enough for me to reach and fit through. I crawled to the doorway, but the sight of two big, long eyes stopped me. The eyes were fixed on mine, in the dark. I turned on the flashlight and shined it at the figure. It was Foxy. He looked like a broken, unfinished animatronic with pieces missing altogether. His legs didn't even seem to be finished, as his robotic legs were not even covered by plastic fur. And his feet were just two pieces of metal. He raised his hook hand. He raised his hook hand and started moving quickly towards me. I managed to get up on my knee, ignoring the pain on my knee. I held up the crowbar, ready to swing it like a baseball bat. As soon as the robot got close enough, I swung the crowbar and hit its robotic leg, causing it to fall to the floor. I took this opportunity to smash the robotic head numerous times with the crowbar, causing gears to fly out of its face. The eyes were still glowing, fixed on mine. Its legs seemed broken that it was enough to put it out of commission and stop it from getting me. I hopped closer to the window. The other robots no doubt heard what just happened, so I'd hurry. I reached the window. Luck was on my side, because the window was reachable and big, enough to squeeze through. I swung the crowbar at the window. It didn't break. I suddenly heard many pairs of robotic footsteps coming from down the hall. I swung the crowbar again. The window cracked, but didn't break. The footsteps were right outside the room now. I swung the crowbar one more time as hard as I could, finally causing the glass to shatter. I took one painful leap off both of my legs to reach the window. I pulled myself up and was about to jump out the window till something grabbed my leg. I turned my head to see Freddy Fazbear standing behind me.
Why would you want to leave?
Holding onto my good leg, along with Chica and Bonnie standing behind him. Without thinking, I pulled my leg up, causing pain in my knee, and kicked it back with full force into the animatronic's head. This caused it to lunge back a bit and loosen its grip on my leg, giving me just enough time to jump out the window. I didn't care about returning pain in my knee. I hopped away from the building as fast as I could, with only the sounds I heard being the screaming of the animatronics to come back. I screamed Alex's name at the top of my lungs 3 or 4 times before getting in my car and speeding to my house. I called the cops and explained the whole situation. I then called my parents afterwards. My mother picked up after calling about 3 times, asking why I was calling so late. She screamed into the phone, begging me to tell her it was a joke when I told her I lost Alex. When the cops arrived, I showed them a picture of Alex and explained to them about the robots. I told them that the robot must have somehow been programmed to kill any intruders at night. I tried to make it seem as realistic as possible, but they looked at each other like I was crazy, like anyone would. However, they assured me that they would have the police department look into it. After investigating, police found nothing. No blood, no broken glass, no foul smells, no Alex. And all the animatronics were in their proper places. It's been about a month. Alex was never found. My aunt and uncle still cry their eyes out every day. My parents don't even talk to me anymore. But what kills me the most is knowing the evils that happen inside of that place. That family-oriented place. That even if I told anyone what happened, they would think I'm crazy. I can't prove what happened to Alex, but I know whatever happened to him, these fucking robots had everything to do with it.